Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Waiter, and we're back talking college football. Don't mind the way I talk or sound. I bit my tongue, and it hurts, but I'm going to power through it, just like this for everybody else.
Like
Uh,
this video for this man solely fighting through this. You better like the crap out of this video for this man.
it hurts so bad, but we gotta do what we gotta do. Happy Halloween! As we're recording this, it is Halloween. Um, I know that nobody's going to be watching this on Halloween, but happy
Yeah.
Halloween. I hope you had a wonderful Halloween.
That's why I was thinking I was like maybe we should, but at the same time I'm like nope, this is probably not coming out till no like 8:30 or like 9:30 on Friday morning. So
Yeah.
it'd be like what's the point of dressing up whenever it's the day after? It would just be, you know.
Also, probably today's going to be the last day I'm ever happy in my entire life because I found out that the new episode of Agatha All Along is the season finale.
Yeah,
Uh,
I watched it last night. Can't It's a two-parter. Can't confirm. It is pretty good. It was an interesting finale. The last episode, I'm not gonna lie, when it started, I didn't know where it was going.
okay. That makes me feel better, but I know that also is going to make me feel sadder. Episode 7, for those that haven't watched, one of the greatest episodes in the history of Marvel television. I like a good episode that's non-linear, like that. But I won't say too much more, and I'll finally get us back on track here. Um, Boise State survives a 29-24 ball game, just a close game with UNLV. Look, like we said, this was probably not 100%, but most likely going to be a college football playoff eliminator game for that 12 seed. Uh, but Boise State gets the job done. And look, people are calling this an off night for Ashton Jeanty, and I think that's disrespectful for the national media. 160 plus yards and a rushing touchdown is still a good game for a running back. I don't think we should start to have this bias. I think this is after this week. I think I realized that there's just almost no chance Ashton Jeanty will win the Heisman, and it's performances like this. He still rushes for over 150 yards. He still scores a touchdown. His team still wins. And now we're talking about that he had an off night. That's not fair. And it's just ridiculous to even start spewing that out. It
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
had a pretty big game, which I'm going to acknowledge here. I'm not going to talk about the Cincinnati Colorado game. It wasn't really that interesting of a game to me. But Travis Hunter had a huge game. It was definitely a great reawakening and reminding people of the talent that he is instead of just blabbering on social media about how good he can be in hypotheticals.
Yeah. I wish my off night featured me rushing for over 100 yards, getting in the end zone. If that's an off night, I wouldn't mind an off night like that if I played football, I wouldn't mind my off night being that. It's like, man, only over 100 yards. I didn't get 200 tonight. Dang, you know. But no, it was a great win for Boise. This was a great game to come home to after a track meet of a game on Friday night that I was at. Austin, I don't know if I told you I was at Morrilton Farmington. Did you hear the final score of that game from this past Friday?
I did not.
78-75 final score.
Wow.
I walked almost 4 miles up and down the sideline shooting video. Morrilton's quarterback broke the state record for passing touchdowns in a game with 11. Um, the fourth quarter had 7 lead changes and 49 total points. Yeah, this game didn't go to overtime, by the way. This was all in regulation. So,
I was just about to
um,
overtime.
no, didn't even go to, well, it looked like it was going to go to overtime late. I'm like, this game's going to go to overtime tied 78. Are you kidding me? What the heck's going to happen in overtime? But anyway, it was nice after that. I could just come home, lay down, and watch a great game as I eventually fell asleep watching the game. But it was a great win for Boise State, and like I said, it is pretty much a playoff eliminator for UNLV. And you look at Boise State's schedule down the line. Really, not a lot of tough opponents left on the schedule. The only one I'd be semi worried about is Oregon State on the final week of the regular season. I would be semi worried about that. Besides that, I feel very confident to say that Boise State will be the group of five representative in the college football playoff.
Yeah, and they certainly had something go their way, which we'll get into now. Notre Dame throttles Navy 51-14. The Irish forced Navy's most turnovers since 2002 with six. Look, early in this game, I watched this game. Obviously, I'm a Notre Dame fan. Got together with a good friend of mine who's also a Notre Dame fan. We sat down and watched this ball game. And look, early, Notre Dame kind of was undisciplined on defense. Look, it was kind of a Notre Dame was still going down and scoring on offense, but on defense, they were kind of falling for the tricks in the triple option that get the triple option running. They were trying to play the pitch way too much. And so all Blake Horvath was having to do was look the other way, and guys were jumping, and he was breaking off big runs. But once the team got disciplined and sat down, they were forcing turnovers, taking advantage, and getting on the field and scoring. And look, I know some of those turnovers came early in the game for Navy, but the game was still, two possessions, and Navy was still getting down the field. Notre Dame really took over in this game, and they get a big ranked win that finally pushes them in the top 10 of the AP poll. Too bad the AP poll waited until they're so irrelevant that it doesn't matter to put Notre Dame back in the top 10. This was a huge win for Notre Dame and a huge win for teams like Boise State, and Army, who look, they're looking for that group of five spot. Makes it a little easier when another team gets a loss and your path starts to get a little slimmer. Fortunately for Navy, this is a great loss to have on your resume, just like Boise State's Oregon loss. Look, you really need to win out if you're Navy, but losing to number 8 Notre Dame is not such a bad look right now.
No, listen, they could win out. Their chances, I think, are done of the play. Like I said, I've already made my opinion pretty clear about where we stand on that. I will say, bet of the week from this game was beautiful. I never had a doubt at any point in this game. It was good to have that, and plus, I made $75 later in the day because of a certain thing we talked about from last week. So I was feeling good on Saturday betting wise with that. But no, Notre Dame dominated this game. Like I said, Navy just turning the football over, it pretty much cost them. And that's pretty much what made this game ugly right from the get go. Notre Dame went right down the field, scored. Navy was getting started on offense. They fumbled. Notre Dame gets in the end zone. Bang, they're already up 14-0 already. So, yeah, it was clear domination by Notre Dame. And look, we talked about with Notre Dame, Florida State coming up next week, or yeah, it'd be next week. It'll be next week. And then, got to play Army still. That one I think is at Yankee Stadium. So another neutral site game. I don't know why. And then, of course, USC still tough defensively, but you got to like where you're at, Notre Dame. That was a very impressive win to get against the talented Navy team.
Yeah, I was very happy watching that one. Speaking of our favorite teams doing well, the Hogs run it up 58-25 in Starkville against the Bulldogs. And look, this was a great win for Arkansas, and I am not against running the score up and kind of making a statement. I think the Hogs really needed this. My thought process in this game was Mississippi State was at least going to make this game close because this was, a team that's playing better and better every week. This is a team that, look, no offense to the Razorbacks. I know we have a lot of Razorback fans out there, but of all the SEC games on the schedule, this is the game Mississippi State had to feel like was their best chance to win, especially with what happened to the Razorbacks last week. So I
Truly
thought,
did seem like that.
yeah, so I thought that they'd come out and give a fight. But look, the Hogs did a great job. The big thing for them was goal line defense. This defense got gashed in this game. If you look at the box score, it's not pretty. And look, there may have been 1 or 2 or 3 touchdowns that may have been taken off the board that maybe shouldn't have. As a little bit of an unbiased perspective, I think at least one of those 3 reviewed touchdowns for Mississippi State probably should have been in. I think the first one is the one, if I had to guess, that's the one I think should have been a touchdown. I thought he was in. I also hated the spot immediately after that. That was almost at the 2-yard line. But still, the Hogs got it done. Even if you gave them all 3 of those touchdowns, Hogs still win this game.
Nah,
So,
Taylon Green looked really, really good. That's the thing that made me happy. He went out and did good. Braylon Russell was incredible, the freshman from Benton. I'm happy to see him go out and dominate as a true freshman. We know what the running back room can be. And it seems like the offense, that's the first time I actually enjoyed watching the offense in a while, I think. because there were points in the past couple weeks they had struggled and hadn't looked good. This is a week where we expected them to score a lot of points against Mississippi State, and they did. And look, you're one win away from bowl eligibility. I think it's safe to say that Sam's job security, if he wins one game to get to a bowl game, I mean, they host Louisiana Tech, so they should be able to get to 6 wins. Um, but I think it's safe to say Sam at least bought himself another year. How I feel about if he should get another year is a totally different opinion on it, but nonetheless, it was a good win this past weekend in Starkville.
Yeah, absolutely big win. Then we have the Ducks. They leave no doubt in Eugene, winning 38-9 against Illinois. Look, this was right out of the gate, pure domination. They got to Illinois, they disrupted the offense, and they took advantage of this defense. This is a defense that had not given up this much points all season. Even in their one loss up to this point against Penn State, they held Penn State to low numbers. Close games all year. The Ducks get the job done. And look, again, in these losses for Illinois, you can turn and look and see how teams win these games. Their 2 losses this year. Luke Altmaier, in wins, he's not thrown an interception. In losses, he's thrown picks. The good defenses that want to shut down Illinois, they put pressure on them and they make life hard for Luke Altmaier, who's been a great quarterback this year. And that seems to be the key to beating this team, disrupting Altmaier and throwing him off. But that's really the key. I say that like it's, profound. That's the key to beating most teams. If you get their good quarterback who leads their team and leads their offense to make some mistakes, you can probably beat them. So I know that's not profound to say, but the Ducks do it, and they did what not only one other team's done this year, force Illinois to turn the ball over.
It was really, really impressive for them to dominate this game. And really, I mean, they didn't dominate like run all over them, big run plays. They were just going constantly on big drives down the field, 8, 9 play drives consistently on this Illinois defense. And you mentioned once Luke Altmaier was turning the football over, this game was done. This game was done whenever they were struggling to turn the ball over there. So, but Oregon, listen, obviously we're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings coming up and stuff. Um, obviously we'll see what they do at Michigan this weekend, but if there was a specific team that I think is number one right now, I think it has to be Oregon. I don't think there's any other conversation that should be had about a number one team. The only one I could give it to is maybe Georgia, but even then, I would still give an edge to Oregon.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. Then we've got the Rebels come back to defeat the Sooners 26-14. Look, at halftime, this game looked bleak. Very, very bleak for Ole Miss. Jackson Arnold was playing some great football, and they just could not get anything going. But props to Lane Kiffin. Whatever he said at halftime, it worked. This defense did not give up any points in the second half, and this offense came out and looked lethal. This is the Ole Miss that we expected to see all season this year, and we have not seen them as much as Lane Kiffin would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the offense really did struggle. I mean, specifically running the football. They could not do anything running the football in this game against OU, which we talked about how good their defense truly can be at points. But the offense was getting going in that first half. Jackson Arnold threw those 2 touchdown passes, and it's like Ole Miss having a major letdown spot. Whenever it already is must win for every single game the rest of the season for them. If they want any miracle chance of somehow being that last at-large team to make the playoff. But they were able to dominate second half, like you mentioned. The defense shut down the OU offense, and I mean, they survive another week. I mean, similar to the college basketball, it's survive in advance. When you get to these 2 losses, survive in advance. You're at Arkansas this week. You get to try to win there in a tough environment, and then you host Georgia the next week. So you got to be ready. These next 2 weeks, your final 2 games are Florida and Mississippi State. Those two, I think they can win, but these next 2 weeks, if they want a chance, they got to win them both.
Absolutely. Then we have the Buckeyes. Their defense seals a 21-17 thriller against Nebraska. Another game where it looked scary for the Buckeyes for a long time. But their defense able on that final drive to get that interception, seal this game, and not have to worry about a potential game-winning drive. And look, I'm going to say it like this. This was not the best game for the Buckeyes, but they get the job done. But for Nebraska, can we just commend? I know we've done this before. I think even this season, can we commend Matt Rule on the job that he's done in Nebraska? I feel like it goes without saying at this point how great of a coach this guy is at a college level. The way he's able to turn teams around. Look, I know they didn't win this game, but they've been ranked this year. They've won some big games, and they almost got the job done in this game. A 21-17 game against the Buckeyes. Look, this is just not a spot that this team would have been in 2 years ago. And so the way he's been able to turn this program around, I absolutely commend him for. But Ohio State, they got to clean it up because they got a tough test this coming weekend.
With them, the problem I'm noticing, the offensive line is getting very injured and has struggled in the line of scrimmage in this game. And their starting left tackle got injured, if I'm correct, against Oregon. And then their backup gets injured in this game, which they had to move their center to play tackle. So they're having to adjust the O-line all over the place, and it really cost them in the line of scrimmage and let Nebraska hang around in this game. But listen, they got the job done at the end of the day. The defense stepped up, and that's what it's going to take to win next week against the talented Penn State defense. They're going to have to walk in, and this is going to have to be a low-scoring game for me if Ohio State wants to win, because I worry about their offensive line going against that Penn State defensive line that has looked really solid this year.
Absolutely. Then we have the Tide. They shut out the Tigers 34-0. And look, the story of this game was Brady Cook obviously was not healthy, and they just could not run their offense. And then even when they took him out and replaced him with Notre Dame legend Drew Pine, who I know can't throw a football, things just didn't get any better for this team. So the running game already took a huge hit losing Cody Schrader. That guy was really the life force of that run game. Obviously, he was a great running back. And they haven't really been able to replace him. And then to now not have a passing offense, I mean, there was no way this team was ever going to be able to put up points against Alabama. This was the expected result. And great job for the Tide to get the job done here and keep themselves in that top 25 because they were spiraling.
Let me just say, since we're probably not going to mention much about the AP Top 25, Missouri being ranked is the most criminal thing I've seen the AP Top 25 do probably since we've done this show. It is one of the most criminal things I have ever seen. The two times they have played good football teams, they have gotten their butts kicked. And this is probably the closest blowout I've ever seen because, in all honesty, I really don't think Bama played that well. And they won 34-0. But I mean, it was just really an ugly game. It really was about what I expected it to be, a domination by Alabama. And listen, Bama, like you said, they live to fight another day. They got the bye week this week, and then it's a college football playoff eliminator next week in Death Valley at night against LSU. That will be a massive one. The loser's out. I mean, that's what's incredible about this 12-team playoff is we're getting to points where we're seeing elimination games in this big time spotlights that we're going to have next week. But yeah, Bama rolled like I think many people expected them to.
Yeah. Now I'll take words I didn't think I'd say at the beginning of the season for 1,000. Texas holds on to beat Vandy 27-24. Oh, look, and the Vandy cover was far too easy. I made myself some money this weekend. Maybe you did too. Look, I thought this was just too easy. 16.5 was ridiculous. Texas got flat out embarrassed last week. I did not think they were going to come out and play hot. I know a lot of people thought, hey, spark a fire under them. I didn't see that out of this team. It wasn't the vibe I got from that game. It was a bad experience, and this team needed. They still needed more. And so Vandy coming out and played their brand of football and showed out, and Texas is able to hold on just at that last second and keep this game together and keep the win. But yes, easy money with me. I made myself some money this weekend. Man, this was a fun game to watch.
It was a close game, really. Texas fell behind early, and then they scored 3 touchdowns unanswered, and that's when everyone was like, okay, Texas, they're going to roll in this game. But then Vandy got the field goal before half, They've shut down the Texas offense, got in the end zone, made it a 7-point game entering the fourth quarter, had their chances, but Diego Pavia just had a couple of mistakes throwing the football in this game in that fourth quarter that really cost them the opportunity late because they had the turnover. Texas got the field goal to go up by 10. Logically, even though they scored the touchdown, it would need a miracle on the onside kick to win it. So yeah, but Vandy, I mean, look, they competed. I went with Vandy plus 18. I did it solely because I was like, I have money on Texas to win. Obviously, the $75 from last week, but I was gonna root for Vandy to keep this game close. I wasn't gonna root for Texas to blow them out. I wanted a good game, and we got a good game here in Vandy. Listen, you have it all in front of you still. You're at Auburn this week. You're 5-3. You need one win to get the bowl eligibility. Capitalize on it in these final four games. You got Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, Tennessee. All you gotta do is go 1-3 in this stretch, and you're going bowling. So, and that's what we love to see. Get Dandy Vandy in a bowl game. But this was a fun, close game and a good bounce back for Texas. So yeah, it's really good for them. And now they get a week to rest for the Longhorns.
And finally, Marcel Reed leads one of the most improbable. I think improbable is probably a stretch, but I like to use this word here because it just the momentum. It was just an insane comeback. The momentum all of a sudden swings in LSU's favor. They look like they're just going to take over, and the guts by Mike Elko to say, you know what, we have to go with the young guy. We need the threat of the quarterback run, and not just having the threat, but the ability for the quarterback to get the job done. I think they scored a touchdown on every Marcel Reed drive until that last drive of the game. A&M is the number one team in the SEC right now. This has been a really great turnaround for Mike Elko, and it just goes to show what kind of a talent he is as a head coach. This is something Jimbo Fisher could not do for 1 week as the head coach of Texas A&M, and Mike Elko has done it in his first season.
Yeah. Listen, we both agreed, and we were both like, dang it, A&M hired an actual good coach this offseason whenever it happened, which was terrible, but good for A&M because they have the talent there. It was, can the coach actually get the most out of it? And after the week one loss to Notre Dame and the offense really didn't look that good, everyone kind of wondered, is this just another 8-4 year happening for A&M? Since that game, they have been on a roll, dominated the rest of their SEC schedule. I'm not going to say it was the toughest SEC schedule in the world. I'm not going to come out here and act like that's true, but this was the game that would determine it. And in all honesty, first half, I thought LSU was going to embarrass them. Up 17-7, everything looked like it was going LSU's way. And then, bang, the interception by Garrett Nussmeier got him down to the red zone. And like you mentioned, the big move by Mike Elko saying, you know what? We needs to change something. Let's get Marcel Reed in there. And he dominated from then. He threw 2 passes. And I don't know if LSU just didn't plan for Marcel Reed. Not only that, just for a quarterback that could scramble. I mean, it was basically like, wait, you can scramble? Oh, okay. Well, we can't stop you. You just go ahead and score. That's basically what it was like this entire second half. And Garrett Nussmeier, man, he looked so good in the first half. And the second half, boy, oh boy, he made some horrendous throws in this game. They were quite bad. But like you said, the big storyline, A&M, sole possession of first place, the only team that's undefeated in SEC play right now. And listen, their path is in front of them. The only game left on their schedule that is any challenge at all, really, or should be, is the Texas game when they come to town the day after Thanksgiving, which, my gosh, has that game not gotten any crazier than we already thought it was going to be at the start of the season? That'll be a terrific game there. But this is a great win for A&M. The question is, what do you do at quarterback going forward? I know someone would say it's easy just go with Marcel Reed, but was this just Mike Elko playing the hot hand? That's my question going forward, is how does he manage this QB situation? He manages it the right way. You could see an 11-1 Aggie team playing for an SEC title.
Absolutely. Um, so, like I said, we're not going to talk about the AP poll anymore. Next week, after all our action, The college football playoff has their first uh, rankings that come out. So this week we thought we'd get ahead of the curve, beat them to the punch, and announce our top 12 teams coming into this week. And I'm going to go ahead and lead off with mine here. Uh, at, at my top four spots, I'll go ahead and save some of the suspense because I don't want anybody looking at me crazy. I went ahead and put the four best division leaders, in my opinion, at the top four spots. I don't know if that's how the college football playoff will do it right away. They might just take their top 12 teams for the first few weeks until we get closer to conference championships. I really don't know because it is a little too early to tell with some of these conferences and such. But right now, that's how I'm going to do it because that's how they're going to finish the year with their top 12. So, if you don't have yours that way, I'm not going to argue, complain. Top 12 completely subjective for whatever you want to do. I think that these teams would be in my top 12 no matter what, if that makes anybody feel any better. Just probably not in this order. But at number one, obviously, Oregon. We talked about it. They're the clear and obvious number one team in the country. I think this is where they deserve to be. At number two, I go with the team at the top of the ACC right now, and that's Miami, undefeated. Starting to look more and more impressive as the season goes on. Maybe starting to get over some of those lumps. I've got them at number two. At number three, I have the surprise team at the front of the SEC right now in Texas A&M. Honestly, an incredible performance to get out in front. I wanted to put them at two, but I just can't justify it with Miami being undefeated and the way they've been playing these last couple of weeks. And then at number four, I've got the Big 12 leader right now, BYU, at the number four seed. Kind of crazy that I'm saying that right now. This whole top 12 right now feels like a fever dream as I go through. Then at number five, I've got Penn State. At number six, I've got Georgia. At number seven, I've got Ohio State. At eight, I've got Texas. At nine, I've got Notre Dame. At 10, I've got Indiana. At 11, I've got Clemson. And at 12, I've got Boise State.
Okay. So just to be clear before I go forward with mine, no, I didn't rank the top four as like you said with that, but I think that's fair, however it is. And number two, are you basing yours off of before this weekend? Just want to make sure of that.
Yes, mine is based off before this weekend.
Okay, that's what I did too. I didn't know if we were going to go with what we thought was going to happen this weekend, but that makes sense. Number one for me, so this is not in the top four like his, but I'll just say who I have as the top four right now. I'll just go ahead and say that. So number one, like you said, Oregon. Yeah, I'm not gonna put Oregon anywhere but number one until they prove me wrong there. Number two, this might be controversial, but I've got Georgia here at number two. I think that they're going to keep them up there extremely high with the close game to Bama and then beating Texas very earlier on. I think that. So number three, I'm going to stick with Penn State there at number three. I think that they have the better overall schedule between them and the number four team, which I think is Ohio State right now. That's the top four I have overall. Number five is where I've got Texas. Texas, I think, and listen, this has been the top five. We have agreed these are the top five teams. There hasn't been any question about that. If they all win, obviously they won't all win. We'll get Ohio State or Penn State. Whoever wins that staying at the top. But it's safe to say these have been the top five teams. Number six, I had to put Miami there. I think even though their schedule hasn't been the most difficult, they want to get one of those top conference teams from the ACC in that top six, I think. Number seven, I got Notre Dame. I know this is moving them up a little bit higher than what normally could be, but I think they've continuously got better after that Northern Illinois loss and the big win over Navy. I think absolutely did it. I said number seven for Notre Dame, right? I'm making sure I'm staying on
Yes.
track here. Number eight, I got Texas A&M here. I think it's very fair given the wins that they've gotten and the win against LSU last week. So yeah, I think they deserve to be number eight there. Number nine, I've got BYU here at number nine. I like BYU in the top 10. They have been the Cinderella story of the season. I mean, I got no idea how this Big 12 is going to work out, but I mean, I would be disappointed if we didn't see some sort of chance for BYU to take home that Big 12 title. Number 10 is where I have Tennessee. I think solely because I think, given that they've won a game technically against a top 10 opponent, I have made my opinion very clear on Tennessee and Bama in recent weeks. Whether they should be ranked, I really don't think either one of them is a top 15 team in college football. That's totally my opinion, though. And then 11 and 12, I've got Iowa State at 11, and I've got Indiana at 12. And then if I had to put one at third, I was choosing between Indiana and Boise State for 12 there. But I end up giving it to the Hoosiers, given they're undefeated.
I like that you were brave enough to not put Clemson in the top 12.
Yep.
I really wanted to put Iowa State there,
I
but
mean, what has Clemson done? I think if we're looking at
I
resume, I haven't seen Clemson do anything.
I agree. I'm 100% with you. I don't think the college football playoff looks at it like that because they're looking at the brand that Clemson is. But I'm absolutely 1,000% with you. What have they done? They played one good team and they got throttled.
Yeah, and listen, the thing I'm curious about while we're talking about college football playoff, I'm curious what they're going to use because we've talked about it all the time. Their way they grade these teams and put them in their spots is different every single year. Some years they go, who has the best resume? Some years they actually use head to head. Sometimes they won't use any logic at all and just put who they think the best teams are in that spot. It's different every single year. So I'm curious, and that's the thing I always look for in these first rankings is what is the reasoning when they talk to the college football playoff commissioner? What's the reasoning for some of the questionable spots? And I think last year it was mainly head to head because we had that talk about Bama and Texas. That was like a main one in that, with especially at the end of the year. Year before that, it was resume work. So, but I'm curious to see what this playoff will look like. And of course, this will be the most important of polls that we're going to see on that Tuesday, November 5th, obviously.
Yeah, there is literally not one more important or defining moment in American history that will happen on
Can't
Tuesday.
think of one. Can't think of one at all.
Then we've got, let's get to our team of the weeks now. And let's flash back on what was a great weekend of college football. Starting at my number five, I put Boise State. This team went out and won a big game that they needed to stay alive in this college football playoff conversation. And Ashton Genty had a good game. I don't care what anybody says. At number four, I went with Notre Dame. I think this was a big climb back week. Look, like you said, they've been getting better and better every single week. Their average margin of point differential, sorry, or margin of victory since the Northern Illinois loss is over 30 points a game. 30 points of separation. Average is the average difference in all of their games since the Northern Illinois game. That is unbelievable. At number three, I went with Oregon. This wasn't necessarily the toughest test Oregon's had all year, but this was a good defense in Illinois and a team that just plays good football, and they were able to go out there and get a big win. At number two, I went with Pitt. Look, I really wanted to highlight the whole Pitt defense as my player of the week, but I figured I would just honor them as a team in my team of the week. This team played phenomenally well against a very good Syracuse team that likes to take the top off and still did in this game. Kyle McCord still threw for over 300 yards in this game, even though he threw 5 interceptions. But the way they forced turnovers was incredible. And then at number one, I think this was going to be the obvious pick, Texas A&M. What an absolute turnaround after week one. Absolutely had to give them a top spot.
My top five, we got some similarities, but a couple of differences at the bottom. So number five for me, I put Colorado here, rightfully so. Deion Sanders has gotten them to bowl eligibility. They're ranked now, and they got the win over Cincinnati. They are still very much alive in the Big 12. They're scheduled to end the rest of the year. They really could finish the year 10-2 based on the way their schedule looks for the final 4 games. Number four, I put Tulsa here, and this is one that I think might be threw some people off. They played UTSA this week in a matchup. UTSA had a 35-7 lead at halftime, and Tulsa came all the way back to win this football game 46-45 in regulation. So it was incredible comeback for them. Had to show them some love. Speaking of a team we had to show love, I technically did on our show last week, but it was this past week in college football. Kennesaw State taking down Liberty, their first FBS win. Had to show the Owls some love. Who gives a hoot? The Owls do. Number two, Boise State, like you said, this was basically a playoff eliminator. They went on the road into a tough environment, a great UNLV crowd. And no matter what you say about Ashton Genty and them, the whole team stepped up big time in this game to get the win and, in my opinion, essentially guaranteed them a spot in the college football playoff. And number one, listen, it was going to be Texas A&M. I don't think there's any question about that. Very clearly, the way they dominated that game in the second half was incredible. They deserved to be ranked at number one on my team of the week.
Yeah, this was a great week, and the fans, they had some things to say. Kennesaw State and Pitt retrieving those votes on social media, but unfortunately, maybe the first time this has ever happened. Texas A&M will not win a single poll, and they will still be our team of the week. What just really quite the turnout here for Texas A&M. But look, it's hard to argue. This is just an unreal team that's been on an unreal run. Team of the week goes to Texas A&M. Then we've got our players of the week. At number 5, I went with Trey Stewart, running back from Jacksonville State. Big win for Jacksonville State. Over 200 yards rushing. 3 touchdowns, I believe. No, one. It was 1 touchdown. It was 1 touchdown. That's why he's at 5. Over 200 yards, but 1 rushing touchdown. But just a dominant day on the ground still. A huge, huge performance and a big win for Jacksonville State. At number 4, I went with Tez Johnson, wide receiver from Oregon. Huge receiving day against one of the best defenses and best secondaries in the country. To go out and get a big win in the Big Ten and stay undefeated and solidify yourself as the number 1 team in the country. At number 3, I went with Colton Joseph, quarterback from Old Dominion University. Colton Joseph, huge passing game, 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards passing, just dicing up in a big game. At number 2, I went with Rasheem Biles, a linebacker from Pitt. He had a phenomenal interception, took it to the house for a pick, had 7 tackles, 4 assisted tackles, and 1 sack. He was everywhere in this game, was a nightmare, and kind of the leader of this defensive charge in this Pitt game. But at number 1, look, I messaged you as the game was happening, and I said, if A&M wins this game, Marcel Reed is my number 1 player of the week, and they did, and he is. Marcel Reed from Texas A&M. Look, 2 for 2 passing, 70 yards. Doesn't jump out to you, but he threw a huge pass. What really jumps out to me is the way he was able to manage this game. He ran the read option incredibly well, ran for multiple touchdowns, and every drive he was on the field ended in touchdowns and got this team a big win and sole possession of first place in the SEC.
We'll see some similarities in ours with that top spot, but different pretty much everywhere else. So my number 5, Auburn. They finally won a game, and it was courtesy of running back Jarquez Hunter. 278 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns against a very good Kentucky defense. Had to show him some love. Number 4, the guy who won SEC Offensive Player of the Week, Taylon Green. I mean, we talked about how great he was. 300 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. You know, once he was SEC Offensive Player of the Week, I was like, well, I can't be biased. If he's SEC Offensive Player of the Week, I think I got to put him in there. Number 3, we got my defensive special, as you know, Kamen Rucker from North Carolina in their big dominant win over Virginia. He had 3 sacks on the game and an interception on the defensive line. Had an interception, had a great return. It was awesome. It was incredible. And I had to show him some love for a dominant performance there. Number 2, Travis Hunter. We talked about it. He's back in the running now with that great performance for what he did against Cincinnati. offense and defense, you name it. He did it in the game, and incredible celebrations to go with it too, if I might add. I will just add that. And
Yeah.
number one, I sent it to you as soon as you sent me that message. I said, if they win, he's mine too. Marcel Reed, he literally turned that game around. Because I'll be honest with you, when he came in the game at first and scored, I was like, okay, cool. They scored inside the 10. That was smart to bring him in. But then they brought him back out for the next possession, right down the field. Next possession, right down the field. Next possession, right down the field. They could not stop the guy running the football, 3 rushing touchdowns, passed the ball good on the 2 passes they needed him to make. So, absolutely, he deserves the number 1 spot. And based on the polls, I would imagine he took home the prize as our player of the week, Austin.
Yeah, unfortunately, he really probably only needed to win a poll to solidify himself, and that he did. He and Taylor Green taking home extra fan votes, but Marcel Reed, he wins it. He's our player of the week, and for only the second time this year, we've had team of the week and player of the week match up. But look, huge week for A&M, huge week for Marcel Reed. Man, this was an exciting week of football, and that was an exciting football game to watch.
Now the question for A&M, all this hype in them, can they avoid the letdown? That will be the question this weekend.
Absolutely. And as we get into our game previews, let's start with A&M versus South Carolina. South Carolina has been a very competitive SEC team this year. They've given a lot of fights to a lot of tough opponents. A&M's not going to be able to take their foot off the gas this week. But the big question coming in this game, we've alluded to it all week. Where does Elko go with the starting quarterback this week? Does he go back to Weigman and let him earn his trust back? Or does he give the ball to Marcel Reed and let him take over? Look, I kind of thought I didn't love what the broadcast did during the A&M game. They basically showed the moment where Connor Weigman's soul left his entire body. They showed the replay where Elko told him he was out, and you could tell he was very visibly upset. He was not thrilled with being taken out. And I understand that you're a competitor. You're in a close game with a conference opponent. This is a big game. You don't want to be benched in a moment like that. But what made it even worse is showing his face and his reaction to Marcel Reed leading that first touchdown drive. You could just tell on his face by the way he reacted. He knew, yikes, I'm going to be on the bench at least the rest of this game.
This is a fun game. It's a fun.
Yeah,
What makes it better is it's a night game at South Carolina, and that's why a part of me thinks that I wouldn't be shocked if Connor Weigman gets the start. No disrespect to Marcel Reed, he has not played in an environment that there's going to be like on Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium in South Carolina. So I think Marcel Reed could go out and do well, but you wonder if Mike Elko's like, I'm going to ride with the guy who's played in the big games more in Connor Weigman. So I don't know what happens there, but I know this: Lenore Sellers is fully healthy. Rocket Sanders is tough to beat in that run game, and special teams, Austin. Since Beamer's gotten there, special teams has been the big thing for South Carolina. I would imagine a special teams player too going South Carolina's way in this game, but it should be a close game and a fun battle on Saturday night.
I'm with you there. Then we've got the Razorbacks taking on Ole Miss. Look, this is going to be an interesting matchup here. The Razorbacks had a flashy, big offensive performance, but now they're going to be facing a much better team in Ole Miss. And if this Arkansas defense lets Jackson Dart throw the ball the way they let Mississippi State throw the ball, it will be a long game. But the same goes for Ole Miss. If they let the Razorbacks have the kind of first half that Jackson Darnold in Oklahoma had, this could be a very high scoring ball game. These two teams did not do a whole lot of stopping, at least in the first half for Ole Miss. I think this is going to be a closer battle on paper, especially with the Razorbacks getting some momentum and some confidence after that big win last week, and now looking to play spoiler for Ole Miss's college football playoff hopes.
To me, the big question is how aggressive will this Arkansas defense be? We saw in the Tennessee game when they were aggressive defensively, they made Nico uncomfortable in that game. And it's clear Ole Miss, I struggled running the football last week. If it's me and I'm Arkansas defense, I'm going out there. I'm sending pressure at Jackson Dart and basically daring them to run the football early in this game. I don't know if they will, but that's what my goal would be if I'm Arkansas. And if you're Arkansas, listen, this is a talented Ole Miss defense you're going against. I say be ready. I say use a lot of play action. Let's run the football early with Braylon Russell and then utilize play action with Taylon Green. Get him some easy reads early in the game to build the confidence that they might need him to take some big shots down the field later in the game. But similar to A&M and South Carolina, this will be another really close SEC matchup, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And final game preview I really want to take a look at is Louisville versus Clemson. And look, Clemson, like we said, does not have a very impressive resume. They haven't played a very impressive schedule. And I think that, they're still unimpressive. But this is a team that's been pretty competent this season. It's a well-coached team. They're not as good as they were last year, but still, I think this is going to be a game that's going to help tell us a little bit more about what this Clemson team is, and maybe give them a little bit more trouble.
I think so. And look, we talked about with this Louisville team. They have just lost close games. Close games have cost them in all 3 games this year. They can compete with the top in the conference. It's just, can they finish the game? That's truly the only key. I think offensively, they can keep up with Clemson. Defense, that might be the difference in the game on the defensive side of the ball, maybe. But I have faith in Louisville to make this a close game. It's just a matter of, are they going to be ready for the moment? And if it's a close game late, can they capitalize on the road and in a tough environment like that?
I'm with you right there. Let's take a look at our game picks. I've got 2 game picks there. Really 2 top 25 matchups this week. So I really want to take an extra close look at these 2 games. And we're going to start with the lesser of the 2. That's Pitt versus SMU. Number 18 Pitt versus number 20 SMU, going off the top of my head here. But look, this is an ACC battle. This is a battle against a team that's kind of come out of nowhere in this ACC and, been a shocker in Pitt, and a team that we expected to be maybe a new-faced contender in this ACC and take advantage of maybe a weaker field this year in SMU. And so far, SMU has almost lived up to that hype. They're ranked. They're playing well right now. And now both of these teams get a chance to prove themselves against a top 25 conference opponent.
Yeah, and I mean, for the ACC, this is an interesting one because you look at it, if SMU wins, SMU, Clemson, and Miami don't play each other the rest of the season. So if SMU wins this game and they win out, and Clemson wins out, and Miami wins out, you got a 3-way tie at the top of the ACC. I don't even want to go into tiebreaker rules because we already know what happened the last time we looked into tiebreaker rules in the Pac-12. So I got no idea what to expect if that happens. But to me, the question comes down to this SMU defense. I really don't have as much confidence in this SMU defense. I think the offense can be really good. They can score points, but Kevin Jennings, I'm hearing, is dealing with an injury. He is questionable for Saturday night. Eli Holstein, we know what him and this Pitt offense can do. We know what this defense can do and turn the ball over. SMU turned it over 6 times last week against Duke and still somehow won. You can't turn the ball over like that and expect to beat Pitt. I think they have some turnovers in this game. I'm going to give it to Pitt to get the win here on the road at SMU and get in control for that top 3 in the ACC.
Yeah, I like Pitt in this game. I think they played really well. Like you said, struggling with some injuries right now for SMU. Had a rough week last week. I like Pitt and this defense to come in and send another message to the ACC about who this team is this year. Our other big game pick this week, the biggest game of the week, and unfortunately, it'll be in the very first game window, which I just hate. I just hate the way the Big Ten chooses to operate. Penn State versus Ohio State, a game that could put Ohio State on the cusp of elimination from the college football playoff. And for me, this is a virtually win-win situation for Penn State. They don't play Oregon after this. They really don't play anybody after this Ohio State game. To me, theoretically, they could lose this game, win out, and they're probably in the college football playoff and probably still in the Big Ten championship game, maybe even. So, I don't think this would be the worst week to lose. I think the pressure is more on Ohio State in this one. You have to win this game. You lose this game to Penn State, you're not going to the Big Ten championship, and you've got to hope some things go your way, maybe for this college football playoff. So, how do you see this thing going, and what do you like in this one?
Let me just say, not only do I hate this game's at 11, I just hate big noon kickoff. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in all college football. Why would you have your biggest game of the day on at the time when almost all the biggest slate of games is on at the same time? Why would you have that then? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. It's ridiculous. It's dumb. This should be the whiteout game at night. Um, but that's just my opinion there. But actually talking about the game, you mentioned I talked about it after Penn State beat USC. I said Penn State's in. I said Penn State's in the 12-team playoff no matter what the rest of the season. And originally that was my reasoning for picking Ohio State in this game because I thought they were the more desperate team. However, more injuries on that offensive line for Ohio State make me worry how they're going to run the ball and how Will Howard will handle the pressure against a really talented Penn State defensive line. And I know the questions are about Drew Aller and how he plays. Honestly, if they have to play their backup, they could use a more mobile quarterback and more mobile ground game with him. So I think either way, they could work for Penn State. I'm going to pick Penn State in this game. But like you said, they could lose this game, and I feel confident that they'll be in the playoffs. Ohio State, if they lose, remember, they still have to play Indiana in the season. So unlike Penn State, they have another ranked matchup on the schedule, and they know this is more important. But I think the injuries on the O line are what cost Ohio State in this very low scoring game.
Yeah, look, usually in a situation like this, you look for a team that's maybe more desperate to look for them to try and come out and make a big shocker. But I think that line of thinking usually goes more with two teams that are desperate, trying to find the more desperate one. I think in a game where, especially in a situation like this, where we both think Penn State's probably sitting pretty no matter what happens in this game, there's a lot less pressure. And I think with so little pressure on Penn State, where they can just come out and kind of be themselves and play football, where Ohio State's hence all week, you're thinking that need to win this game, need to win this game, need to win this game. Sure, sometimes that can lead to a sharper team, but a team like Penn State or a team like Ohio State really has not thrived in that big game pressure this year. Look, over the last few years, Ohio State hasn't played in a ton of big games, even in conference. Really, it's been Penn State, Notre Dame, and Michigan. Not a lot of huge games on their schedule over the last couple of years. Um, and they've been up and down. They haven't won the Michigan game in how long? They beat Penn State and they barely survived the Notre Dame games.
I think pre-COVID was the last time that they beat Michigan, like 2019, because they didn't play in 2020. And then since then, Michigan's won every single one.
So, just not the greatest track record in those big games as of late. I just think the pressure on this team and so little pressure on Penn State leads to just an easygoing victory for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, I have made my points clear about Ryan Day. I don't think he's a good coach. I think, and it's been proven, he doesn't win big games very often. This is your chance, Ryan, to get a big win when your team knows it's playing more desperate, knowing it can't afford a second loss with Indiana coming to town in about 2 or 3 weeks. So here's your chance, buddy. But I stick by my statement until I'm proven wrong, Ryan. So you want to get it done this weekend, get it done. But I ain't picking you to do it.
Yeah, I'm not for it either. I just don't think it's going to happen. So let's take it into our final segment, the segment that everybody knows and loves. We've got our bet of the week. And boy, oh boy, I've got a spicy one for you, but I'm ready to hear your bet of the week.
So I love, and I feel like I'm copying a certain show whenever I say this. I love the board this weekend. I love the board. So I have three for you this week because
Oh,
there's three that I really, really like.
I like
Number
that.
one, the one that I really like, and if I had to pick one, this would be my one. I'm stealing one kind of from your method. Army minus 22 against Air Force. I just think Air Force is terrible. Air Force has yet to cover this year. Army's undefeated against the spread. They've only had a push one time. Besides that, they dominate everyone, and Army gets off to really good starts. I was tempted on the under, but that Army offense being so elite, I'm just going to stick with the spread there. Number two, I like the Ohio State Penn State under 46 and a half. I think this will be a low scoring affair. I don't think either offense will be the most elite and have the biggest success out there. I think you take the under in this game. Number three, my final one, and this is why I don't know how you feel about it. Give me South Carolina money line Saturday night. I think they take down Texas A&M. I think this is a major letdown spot happening for A&M, and I think South Carolina, that environment is going to help them out. Give me South Carolina money line as my third play.
I like how spicy that is. Picking a team from Carolina in an upset, it's almost like you read my mind. Because my bet of the week, I've got one, but I'm sticking to it. I don't know why. Maybe I'm sick and I woke up this morning with some kind of devious illness.
Are you
Uh,
going where I think you're going?
I can't explain it. It's just a feeling. But I like Duke money line against the Miami Hurricanes. I love it. This team has played good ball all year. Their only losses are two close games. They force turnovers. They play good football. They've unlocked some unreal potential and the talent left behind from the Mike Elko era. This team is going to take down Miami, who has been relatively unimpressive for most of the season, and they're going to have a stunner in the ACC.
Being a Miami Hurricane podcast, I find this really offensive. Um, I'm not going to lie. The one I thought you were going with was Florida State money line against North Carolina. I thought you were going there
No,
because
no.
a Carolina team, whenever you said that first, I was like, is he about to pick Florida State to dominate them?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to do that.
I would have been like, you're insane, but I love it. But no, I'll just be honest with you. I think Duke could cover the spread. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they can cover the spread in that game. I'll give you that.
I think they're winning easy, big time upset watch for
This is what
for
when the Missouri podcast goes downhill, we just got to take down the
yeah,
Miami podcast too while we're at it. Okay. All right, I see how it is. All right.
yeah. You're gonna know my suffering. You're gonna know my pain. But with all that, that's gonna do it for us here at the Bold Take Podcast. Make sure tomorrow to listen. Hopefully, I'll be a little bit less injured in our next episode of the Bold Take Podcast, where we talk NFL. I don't exactly know what we're cooking in there, but you know it's something devious.
I will go ahead and give you an insight. I am getting this man's, and I'm telling him now for the first time so he can have his homework tonight. I want his top five NFL teams for the episode tomorrow. We're basically at the midway point of the season. You're getting our top five teams who we think are the five best teams in the NFL, not by record, who we think the five best teams are. That will be a part of it. Also, thank you, Browns. That I'll just say that ahead of the episode.
Yeah, it's almost like they had the wrong guy starting for several weeks.
Crazy, crazy. I know.
Um, Put a guy who wants to play football out there, and you actually win some games. I mean, it directly translated. But that's going to do it for us here at the Bold Take Podcast. That's Austin Waiter. I'm Austin Hill, and we want to thank you for listening.